Welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. On this episode of the Engineering Manager series, Augustus and I spoke to Anand Agrawal, who's the co-founder and CTO of Credgenics. Credgenics is a debt resolution platform that is funded by Axel and is used by some of the top banks and lenders in the country. Anand spoke about how to build in this super regulated space like Fintech, about how enterprise customers impact the product roadmap itself, about adding intelligence to use cases through machine learning and so on, and how he plans to scale his engineering function and team. This is a fantastic primer for someone interested in understanding more about how to build in this regulated space like Fintech. I hope you like it. Hey Anand, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Hey, hi Roshan. Thank you for having me
Hey,
here.
Anand.
Thank you. Hi August. Hi.
So Anand, let's begin with a description of what Credgenics does and also talk to us about some of the high-level engineering challenges that you're solving right now as the CTO and co-founder.
Yeah, so Credgenics is a collections SaaS platform which enables any lender, any banking systems which deals in credit lending or credit line or credit cards to do their collections entirely in-house. So it has a couple of modules embedded in it. You could kind of call the borrowers from the platform. You can automate the communications. You can use predictive analysis to figure out which borrowers are likely to pay than the other set of borrowers. So these type of analytics is kind of provided on the platform. So it's a whole suite of multiple modules on one single platform to enable end-to-end collections by any lender to do it. Yeah. So that is what the problem statement kind of started with. It was more what we saw in any banks, any NBFC, that they used to handle it in a very manual process. All of these collections and all would go in a very traditional processes which were set in maybe 2000s, 2005s when the credit had just began. And that's where I think most of these maybe calling as well would happen through Excel. They would upload it somewhere. They would kind of send all these communications over email. Then these were not channels which were not automated. It was more of manual driven approaches. And that's what we replaced it entirely with a technological solution.
Right. So from an engineering standpoint, what are some of the things that you're trying to solve for? As I understand, you will have to work with a lot of legacy systems. There might be, 10, 20-year-old core systems that you might be working with. So what is that experience like?
I think it's pretty hard. So I would say it's not easy. The reason being, I think we started, so we have multiple integration channels. We have you can get started with an Excel file as well. So maybe you have about for a smaller fintech, there are 1,000 loan accounts which go for collections in a month. You can upload that via an Excel file and get started directly on the platform. The second is through an SFTP connection, and then there comes the API integration, which is the deeper integrations. But with the legacy banks and all, it kind of have entire traditional systems of loan management, and that kind of takes time to do the integrations part. So they definitely kind of get started with the SFTP way of kind of connecting and then sending the data, and then later kind of in the background they start with the API integrations. Though it's more kind of a real-time information passage which should happen, so that the real value of what we want to create in the collection space comes out to be better. And not maybe a delayed, like the payment has been received by the bank but not updated on our platform through an API. That would be a kind of not a very good experience, maybe what we wanted to achieve. So these are problems which are there. We are bringing payment solution to our platform where you kind of generate a payment link in real time on our platform. So that when you need to trigger a customer and you're calling the customer and the customer says, send me a payment link for making this payment, you can actually trigger an email or a SMS or a WhatsApp message to this borrower, and they'll receive a payment link on which they make a payment. And these are interconnected with the banking systems as well as the different techs, so that once the payment is done, they receive a message as well notifying that the amount has been settled and it has been collected back by the lender. So that is one of the use case. The other multiple use cases like the notice sending process, which were earlier manual, we kind of completely driven that to a platform approach. You can now generate lakhs of notices in real time on the platform. Earlier, you were kind of doing it through a mail merge process on Excel, which would be a very cumbersome or a very, very manual process by any lawyer to do it. So we are replacing most of these manual driven process by completely new age technology technology solutions there. And then aided with that is the machine learning, which tools which we bring to predict which one should you go for recovery first, which one should you go at a later, because time is a very important factor in collections. It's more like you would have to kind of uh, if a loan is kind of recoverable today, it might not be after 5 days. The money might not be with the borrower after 5 days. So you would want to kind of go at the right time to that borrower, reach out to the borrower in the right time so that the money comes back in the system, and that's where the collection would be the best optimized in its own ideal state.
Right. So from a technical standpoint, again, right, building out these integrations to enable this handshake across multiple systems and so on, right? How do you think about this? Like from a systems perspective, how do you think about this as such?
So Roshan, I mean, to be frankly speaking on that part, it has been an evolution journey. The reason being, we don't have a competitor in the entire platform itself. So when we started with the problem, we knew we are building a product to help enable the collections digitization. But then there were certain aspects we understood. There were certain depths we understood about the problem. While we kind of started evolving, we understood the problems, different set of different problems which came in, deepened up our understanding in each vertical of these modules, kind of built it on top of where these understanding went on and on. Other companies maybe their like competitors are there. In that scenario, generally what happens is that you look to a product which is there in the market, you try to kind of bring up your differentiator first, that this is what is there, base will remain the same, but the differentiators will be in a like that is what I bring to the table for this client or for this customer. But what we had to do is that we had to think through the solution to each problem by ourselves and then build it like product by product or feature by feature over the period of time. So it has been that journey over the last, 1.5 years. The product building has been through entirely that journey. But in the recent times, like in the past 6 months, more of processes has started to kick in as we scaled, as things kind of came into effect. Like there are not 32 clients which we are kind of managing on our platform, including like 4 different larger banks and 2 different smaller banks. These kind of combined, the volume is a little higher side. You would require bigger teams. Each teams would be kind of handling the modules, and that's where the processes are something which we are now bringing and setting up entirely in our like ecosystem.
Right. So, that brings me to the next question, which is what are some things, people should know before building for banks, so fintech, again, as a space is about 5-10 years, pretty mature, right? So what are some things that people should understand before they set out to build for this ecosystem as such?
Right. So fintech is basically a combination of finance, like enabled with technology. So I would say finance is a very old sector which kind of comes from like ages. But technology is something which has been the recent years, like which has been like 3 decades where it kind of evolved a lot. And I think most if someone like needs to look at a problem, look at what they can build in a fintech space, they should look at a niche. Maybe a niche could be an investment sector, it could be like a personal wealth management, it could be insurtech, it could be maybe collection space, what we do, or a lending space. There are a couple of these different niche which is there. But then a prior experience is good to have, because you have a deeper understanding of these systems. Otherwise you kind of a little bit start on the scratch, and then you keep developing your understanding while you build the product. So I think that is one, figuring out the niche first, and then kind of figuring out what the problem exactly is in that. Maybe the problem could be there is some missing pieces which technology could enable but has not been, which was our case, which was what we did in the collection space entirely, which was maybe a completely in the fintech space, the collections was completely and still manual. We kind of enabled that through technology. That is what we brought to the table. The others could kind of also bring efficiencies to the existing system. So there could be fintech who could be solving some of the other problems, but they have been like for a decade solving it. Their systems are so complicated that to maybe adapt the new technologies or new innovations which could be brought to the system may not be easily doable or feasible for them to do it. New kind of startups could come up to kind of bring better efficiencies or better solutions to such problems which might be there in this space. And then look around for any regulatory or compliances, because fintech is highly regulated, where you talk about insurance, you talk about like investment or dealing with banks, credit, everything, all of these short are regulated by the regulators there. So I think you should look at those regulatory parameters as well. And the important aspect is the security part as well, because these data which you're kind of storing are related to kind of, one, the monetary aspect, and second is that the personal information attached to it. And that's highly kind of important to be secured, saved, and safeguarded, and then it should not be kind of let out to. And then that you need to ensure it from day one. It cannot be that you are dealing with banks. I deal with maybe certain larger banks. I would have to take that as surety first. They would go in and out of my system with respect to security.
This episode is brought to you by Mulya. You want to move fast? Sure. But without breaking things? Now that's a hard ask. The thing is, once you have some base of users and customers, you just cannot afford to risk quality. So how do the likes of Cred, Swiggy, and CureFit, some of India's fastest growing startups, ship at lightning pace and delight their users and customers? Simple, they're working with Mulya as a strategic quality partner. Mulya is India's most talented and passionate community of testers. They've helped prevent thousands of bugs and regression issues. So as a CTO or a product owner, if you want to reduce tech debt, especially while you scale, do check out Mulya.com. I've interviewed Mulya's founder and CEO Pradeep on the podcast earlier, and we spoke about how startups can improve quality while scaling and things to that effect. You should definitely check it out. I'll link to it in the description below. Now back to your regular programming.
Yeah, I think once you start mentioning all these banks and APIs, right? Something that stuck in my mind is, how do you kind of bring in? How does working in the enterprise fintech space like affect your technical culture, right? Because as you know, programmers we love to hack around, we love to use other open source projects, and we try to I think tech today, at least to a large extent, at least quantitatively, has become some sort of remixing culture where we take something, we create something. But when I in my experience working with like larger enterprises and anything sensitive, I worked in the accounting and regulatory industry a couple of years ago, and I know how that changes things, right? Your whole mindset changes. We can't kind of like have this move fast and break things kind of culture with engineers. There's a lot of processes, security, compliance. How did that change the way you built your teams, and how do you kind of like imbibe that culture with your engineers, saying, hey, this is not Airbnb or something where you can come and hack something out, but you've got to follow this. At the same time, how do you kind of like keep things exciting in a very compliance and that kind of a culture? Would love to hear your thoughts.
So I think one major step which we took was in the month of November, I think, or maybe October, if I could remember right. We earlier was like technology team was one technology team as whole, which could kind of work around the entire Credgenics platform. They would have kind of so I think the better part is that I started building this with one of my interns. So there were only two people, one more intern was, so we were three people when we started building this product. One was the front end, and then an intern, and then we kind of started this entire building of the product. But over the journey, when we kind of understood as we are scaling, we would require better processes to be there. These needs to be embedded, because as a single person, we cannot handle the entire teams together. I need to empower them as like smaller teams, which could be more accountable, responsible for what they are kind of developing around the code base. So I think the best step was to break the team into 4 different smaller teams, which could be working around one or multiple of the modules which we have on the platform. So that is one bigger step which we took. Second, I think the challenge is the quality versus speed thing, I would say. Because in enterprise, like Oxter, you talk about the enterprise solutions, generally what would happen is that it's moreover 50% you might kind of create, or maybe 70% you create a product, but 30% there is one or the other customization, especially from your larger customers. That's bound to happen, and you need to accept that fact that they would kind of demand, and you would have to create or maybe satisfy to some extent what they are requiring as part of their problem. So I think there is a gap that we started to some extent, like built 70% of the product, started selling as well, that these are the models which are functional functional, but then these are the entire offering which we could bring. If they kind of demand that this could be done, yes, we can do it. We can do it in 6 days. We can even do it in 20 days. The difference is that the optimization versus the speed. Like in 6 days, if you need, I know the jugaad way of doing it, that I can enable it in the most fastest way for you. But the reason is that there will be only 1 or 2 clients who would be using it. I can take that risk as well, that it's fine, that the load would not be that much, and we can be able to go through it. But at a later stage, when there are more using it, we would want to optimize at the back end as well, that this needs to replace with the right set of solutions, maybe queuing systems involved, maybe a lot of like technological infrastructure would get involved in building the right set of culture there. So that is the call which we take at times, because we are in that space, not the B2C, but the B2B kind of works around a little like that in that manner. And especially given the team or the people who are our customers is generally the collections based customers, who, again, I said that they were traditionally in the manual processes, not very tech savvy. Maybe they might have not used much of CRM platforms. They might have used like little bit of apps and CRM platforms. To get them to use like a little connected modules together at once, it require a training as well. And that's where you need to simplify and break up your entire processes to smaller chunks, go slowly in that, and then kind of see the adaptability of the product and increase your kind of complexity with them getting adapt to what they are currently using.
I think that's a fantastic point, and that actually reminded me of something. I want to share this very small anecdote which I learned while building the same enterprise tech for the accounting and regulatory guys. So we basically built out this. One of the parts of the product had this task management thing, right, where you can, kind of like how Asana works. You can quickly enter your tasks in a very micro way. And one thing was, we had a small bug in our front end where you had to enter your task and click enter twice, right? There was the first enter kind of like remove focus from the first line, and then the second enter went to the second line. And we launched that because we had our deadlines, and then people started using it. And I think in one of the following sprints, we decided to fix it. It kind of like, we thought, hey, why don't we fix this bug? We fixed it out, and the day we fixed, the next day morning, I got a call from one of the big guys saying there's complete chaos here in the office, please come immediately. And I ended up going there in the morning. I was really worried. I thought something major happened. And like they called me into this big meeting room, and all the top accountants and guys there, and they're like, what have you done? There are like hundreds of blank tasks being created. And I'm like, what happened? What happened exactly? And then I actually saw what they were doing. They were so used to clicking enter twice that they were creating blank tasks. And it kind of became such a big thing that they asked me to reintroduce that bug back into the system because they were already used to clicking enter twice. So that was one of my first real enterprise UX lessons that I learned about how it's important to think from their perspective rather than just, it's not just a Jira issue or something from your end, but it's actually affecting somebody else's lives. Would love to know what you think. I want to learn. I want to hear some experiences which you had, or maybe some lessons which you learned from an enterprise angle, where you're not working with early adopters who are quick to change, but rather people who want to just learn it and get done with their job. How has that impacted your tech and UX?
So basically, I guess the things has been quite bumpy. It's not has been plain, simple, or linear for us. Because you start with a complete new category. You're being kind of defining the category here that never have been done before, and you kind of jump into the sector and define and bring a product which to be used by these like maybe the collection teams, the legal teams, to enable collections entirely through a platform. The experiences I would say is that the first time we built a notice model. So there are like different modules which you can have on our platform. The notice module is one of our hot sellable modules. And the best experience was we were never said no by any client. The reason I'll tell you maybe why we started, there was like moratorium situation. We released our product in January 2020. 3 months later, there was moratorium imposed due to the COVID situation, and we were back to kind of zero because there was no collections happening, and then people were not mandated to kind of pay back until the moratorium was lifted. So we got ample time to develop product as well as kind of kick in the sales and all, so that we kind of get ready while the moratorium get lifted and get started. So during those, a lot of demos I might have given, about like 70-75 demos in maybe like 1.5 month I would kind of gone through. Those demos, it would have been like every client you talk, their expectation is so low about the product that maybe this can happen, but what you are showing is something imaginary. I mean, can this kind of product enable something like this in real time? So if you kind of want to send a legal notice, earlier you would send it over an email, a lawyer will draft it, will send it back, someone will kind of post it, then the delivery will happen, and then you'll see the tracking report. Or maybe through an email, SMS, you were not even able to send it, like if you want to send a digital legal notice to a customer. But we enabled it through a platform that you're now able to send a digital notice to a customer or a borrower via email, WhatsApp, SMS, and we get to know that the person has opened the email. We get to know that the person has clicked or read the legal notice. Someone is so much excited about just this knowledge that I know this person has now read this knowledge, kind of legal notice. They would kind of entertain us into more questions, like, can you do this particular part of our problem? And that's where we would get cues of what next to solve. I mean, we have solved this, but what next to solve is that I had a diary that I'd keep writing the next set of problems, just the problems. There was no solution discussion happening. Maybe something intuitive I could discuss that, but then it would be problem which we could go back, brainstorm, think about a feature to it, create a Jira ticket, if not something else, but create a Jira ticket so that we take it up sometime else, and then kind of build on it. And that's how the journey has been. I mean, their expectation, we always went higher than what would have imagined, and that's the reason we kind of have been said. Hardly there were few customers who would have delayed the process, that currently we're busy in like the last quarter of the financial year or some other reasons, but no one has said no to us, like we don't want this product, we want this product, but there might be some customization, or we take it up in the next quarter.
Yeah, that's a fantastic thing, right? And you want your customers to be actually suggesting these things and actually building your product for you in some sense, right? So one nuance with working with enterprises is the customization aspect of it, and the fact that you will have to build a service delivery function in-house, right? Because no matter what product or features you have, it's just not the right fit for them always, right? I mean, they will have 1,000 nuances that they want you to add to the product, because essentially they don't care about the features as much as what those features can do for them and for their context, essentially, right? So I was thinking about, how do you decide to productize some of these features versus looking at some of these as an individual thing that you're going to build for bank A or bank B, right? And how much of the time and effort goes into these things, because I mean, you're a young startup, you have a lean team. So how do you decide what to build, what to productize, and what to maybe say that, hey, let's skip this kind of a thing?
Yeah. So I'll break the question into two parts, maybe. First, maybe how the adaptability comes, which is the first part of your question, and maybe the second is more on the customizations is taken care of, and both kind of would be have separate. So on the adaptability side, I think we have three different processes. What we also kind of were like learning over, like dealing with the clients, we learned how things would work, and then we started onboarding people, and now we have three different teams who would work around the adaptability. First is the onboarding team. Once the sales kind of completes, the agreement and all happen, there is kind of an onboarding team which works on and on with the training team. So there is a training team which would do a hands-on with these people who would be like at the end using the product. They would be kind of giving a hands-on experience of that. There is a product video demo and all given to them, and then the onboarding team kind of takes the data, does all the job for the first time, get them onboarded on the data platform while they do the integration with the backend. At the end, then there is an agent, account management team, which does like 3 or 4 account. Each one person kind of handles one, and then takes a follow up every 15 days. How's the account kind of going? Is it kind of working well for you? What can we do best in terms of improving that? These are the 3 different teams which we have kind of nurtured within Credgenics, and that has worked very well. For something to be best automated, I would say there are tools which kind of have you guide you what to do. Generally, you kind of would see whenever you install an app or a website for the first time, you would see guiding tips to you that at any point of time you could enable or disable that. There are tools like WhatFix is one of the kind of company which does that, and there are other tools as well in the market which enables you to do it. We can develop our own as well as use these tools if you want to kind of quickly not invest the time in doing that, and then kind of using these tools to to ease up the entire training processes, and that's how the adaptability kind of comes into the picture. Well, we still face challenges, would agree to that, because it's again something new, and these will keep happening, but these are good problems to have, and we would kind of be after those problems to solve it at any point of time. So, and second is more on the customization side. I would say a lot of customizations has come. We have just seen customizations in every customer which has been, but the customizations were touch wood, but things were like 90% were like common problems of each one of the lender. I could imagine that the lender might be asking this particular solution, but it's a common problem across different solutions. I'll maybe give you an example of that to better explain it. We had developed a lending product collection. So a collections for lending product. Basically, you have taken a loan of 5 lakh and you need to pay about 24 EMIs. You will be paying an equal amount in each month across these 24 months. And that's where you do a collection. If you do not pay back this month, you kind of need, there will be a collection approach. In the next month, there will be steps accordingly. But there is a different set of product as well in credit and in lending, which we did not maybe had that much depth understanding earlier, did not explore, but we kind of were dealing just with the lending set of or EMI based structure. Then there was this credit line, which came as a client understanding. This straight away said to us, in a month, we do not lend out 5 lakh, we just extend a credit of 5 lakh. You may withdraw from the 5 lakh that you required today of 10,000, you withdraw day after tomorrow of 10,000. Your only billed or maybe your credit taken is about 20,000 only, but you have an like wallet of 5 lakh from which you can keep withdrawing it. So there are different withdrawals which you have made in the entire month. And at the end of the month, the summation of this would be what the collection goes for. But there are different like terminologies, the logics of like which goes for if the payment comes in, which one gets satisfied first, which one gets the payment second, and so on. There are logics behind that. You cannot have the lending product used for the credit line product. We made the kind of first version. I'll not name the client, maybe with whom we started on the credit line, but we kind of made a jugaad to kind of create the lending product into a credit line form. And then at the back end, we started building the credit line at the end. Though credit line at that point, which was made using the existing product, had some limitations to itself. But then in the B2B, it generally takes about like 1 month, 1.5 months in your entire process as well. Maybe the agreement to and fro, a couple of those, maybe like a lot of onboarding process, training process, all of that might take time. And that is where you get those delta, where you can create such or get that head start on the problem which was conveyed at the first place. So this actually happened in building the credit line. That's how we build the credit line. We replaced what the jugaad was with the actual product building in the next 1.5 month, which was there. And we were live in November month with the credit line product as well. Now you can have credit card companies on our platform and they can do the corrections entirely because they act similarly. You would do 5 transactions in a month on credit card and you build for the entire amount, then kind of individual transactions. So that's one of the kind of anecdote. Yeah.
Very interesting. So from what I hear, you're saying like, I see it more as a POC model where you're kind of like creating some proof of concepts with what you have already, probably tweaking it a bit. And then once you get them or once you sign them on, you then start investing in that whole side of the tech stack.
It is just for that different product, I would say, not for the features which is there. I mean, customization are 2 types. One is like entirely a different product needs to be brought because your credit system is different. That is the kind of example for that. But for a feature, if I talk about like you would require some of the new filters, or you would require a section which does a callback kind of a thing as well. A support page you would require for yourself. We would do certain aspects of those customizations as well. We're more than open to do that. It kind of until unless it kind of enables you to do better collection or much more efficiently. So we have done that for many of the lenders, and especially the banks. They would require more of regulatory standpoint. They would require certain aspects of these customizations done. So I think that has been done quite a lot of times.
Got it. And so when we talk about customizations, right? how do you plan for the future? Like as as the company scales, I think at one point, as even Roshan and we were discussing recently, we have to platformize in some way, right? You've got to like make it extensible. You've got to kind of like embed deeply into to solve some specific problem. At the same time, work well with other tools as well.
Right.
How do you see yourself transitioning at least from a tech angle? Because the way I see it, probably now you have a bunch of microservices, or maybe you have some standalone apps, modules, however it is that you split out your product.
So I
From a
think
technical angle, how are you like thinking about the future, scalability,
right.
extensibility, and stuff?
I think moving from a product to a platform, right? So that
Correct.
transition, how have you thought about it as such?
So I
Correct.
think I would say they are both connected. Both the product and technology team are very, very deeply connected. We did not maybe, so in any startup, if you see, they will not have a product manager from day one. They would have the engineers being acting as the product managers for quite some time. And then you eventually, when some product gets built, you kind of have product managers to guide it to the right path. That is what we
And
had in our
then,
journey as well.
and then the real trouble starts when the product guys start making the specs, basically.
Yeah, basically they would create like large BRDs, PRDs, and then you would have to go through.
that nobody reads.
So yeah, I think that's classical engineering problem. I would tell. Nobody engineer. They would look at the diagrams. Okay, I have understood. No need to read the text there.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the product managers, though, kind of they help. I mean, half of the problem is solved if the visibility of what needs to be built is given, which is we have learned the hard way. We did that entire step or the journey in the similar manner that we build the product step by step, and then the product managers joined, and then we saw that the changes which started to happen. The changes were basically earlier we would figure out and do things step by step, but then now we have a visibility what needs to be built. And then we kind of have thought through the solution within the engineering team about that problem. Earlier, the product engineers in the shoes of the product managers would do both the tasks. That would not be the most efficient way of doing it. And that's kind of solves half of the problem there. To look at the longer scale, we kind of, what my thinking is, you spend 2 days extra on thinking what this could mean or result in 2 years, then kind of speeding up yourself. I need to build this today. Unless it is required or a business call because of which I might lose a client, I would not do that. I would rather kind of spend 1 or 2 days extra, 3 days extra in terms of going through multiple meetings, going back to our homes, thinking about the solution, what we discussed today, come back with the new thoughts tomorrow, and then kind of building on top of that. So that has kind of enabled us to not rebuild the things again and again. It has kind of been more of a solution which has been existed from start. If we build a module in the start, that has been there with us till date. The better problem which we might have solved is that earlier the request per second might be very less. That might have quite foldedly increased to a lot number, and that is where scalability challenges come in. That these microservices might be changing a lot, but your RDS might be your databases might be spiking. That is where you need to bring up more queuing systems, more of like pipelines of the data, where you can enable them to have real-time experience and not having your infrastructure to get affected with the load they have. So I think these are like thought processes, and maybe it comes with experience. I would say you can't have it maybe in day one. You kind of evolve and learn it, but you can also have always a mentor at every step. That if you have a problem, maybe you think it through, give to your mentor, and then maybe like tell your solution or ask their solution first, and then convey your thought process, align yourselves towards that. They would have done that evaluation process many times, and then they know the right step to go to at the first place, and then you kind of skip many evolution process in between and directly reach the right goal which you wanted to. I think that has worked well. Yeah.
Right. So if you look at the last 10 or 15 years, right, there's been a huge drive in terms of automation. I mean, literally all of the banks and insurers have have some sort of paperless systems and so on, right? But now we're looking at the next step in terms of taking this automation onto intelligence. Now that's where, things like machine learning and all those things come into all of the use cases that you serve. Now, since you have a data science background yourself, how are you thinking about that aspect of your product as such?
So right, I think I used to work as a senior data scientist with 1MG. That was my previous like profile, which I profession which I kind of came from. Though I used to do backend as well because no one did deploy my models on the production, so I had to develop my own microservices to deploy it. So that's how I learned the backend and all. But to be talking about this evolution of like the automation came in, the analytics came in, and then the machine learning kind of the prediction things started to come in. And that's the beauty of predictions, that it's accurate as well. And you're astonished to see that can the results be predicted. So I would say like we have enabled on our product side a lot of automation side. The reason being the data which we are sitting on. So you can imagine like the collections data which is not with any banking system. So let's assume the ICICI might be doing a lot of collections. They would be kind of submitting a report to civil body saying that the payment of this customer came in August month and then he missed in September and October and again came in November, December month. In these period, there was certain events which must have happened with respect to collection. There would be like calls done to the borrowers, reminders sent, WhatsApp reactions happened, legal notices, a couple of those things might have happened. But there's no central repository of this data for ICICI Bank itself, because there are multiple of these channels through which these things happen. Our platform kind of resides, or all these data of collection sits on one single platform. We do kind of modeling on for one single client. For example, if I have ICICI, once they are like 3 months or 4 months old client, they have ample amount of data. There's like a data science team in house which runs a model which we have built across different smaller fintechs. We try to keep improving that over time, but then the model does two types of jobs. One is it increases your efficiency, which is it enables you to call the borrowers which are more likely to you're more likely to contact them at this point of time. So you would be maybe calling like 200 300 calls in the entire day. Which one to call first, or maybe you have 1,000 loan accounts to call in a week. Which one to call first gets prioritized, and then which one to call last will get at the bottom of the list. And that's where the efficiency automatically starts kicking in. And the second factor is that a machine learning model which kind of runs on this data of collections and improves while this data gets collected on and on with respect to communications, calling and all. It enables you to like even understand how much percentage of probability is there that this will be recovered. Let's assume there are two loans. One is having a probability of 80% recovery, and other is having a probability of about 30%. Which one would you want to prefer first as mode of your collection? You would definitely go on for the 80%, because this is the right guy I just can get the money from, and then the other guys I can see what strategies I can follow. The next step to our machine learning model is that can we kind of design the strategy as well within these different modules which we have, which one to kind of move on with first, which one to go second and third, and so on. You want to kind of optimize your cost as well in the entire process. So we have done all those like analysis of pre-Credgenics, post-Credgenics, pre-model, post-model, what the differences, what the kind of results are, and it has been kind of quite encouraging for us to kind of move in that direction and bring in more data points to the entire data to the modeling, and that has helped a lot in this direction. Automation also, we kind of do a lot of automation, digital journeys and all. So you might be sending email, so you can define rules like if someone has reached like a DPD. So DPD is basically how many days have been since your due date. So if DPD is like 45 days since the due date, you have spent 45 days but not paid back, and your final call or the last call was ringing, no response, what communication will get sent is automated. So every day this kind of finds out these rules will find out the loans, and automatically these communication will get triggered. So every of those manual process again get eliminated there. So these are multiple of those new age technology added features to the entire collection space, which will reduce the manual work, which will kind of improve the recovery rates, as well as kind of cut on the cost and the time which is involved in the collection as well. So the idea is to give this ROI to each lender and enable them to do the collections themselves.
Something which I remember when you were mentioning ML and stuff, right? There was this time where in the same, again, regulatory and thing which I was working on, adding some sort of blockchain mechanism had a lot of value there, because it could enable this sort of ledger which can be fudged. And that was very important in some use cases. But when we tried to use that in our sales pitches, it didn't really work very well because they didn't care. So something which I wanted to ask you is, how do you kind of balance this machine learning and the innovation which you're building, right? How do you balance it out with something that can close deals? Because something you mentioned is, for example, machine learning can kind of, if it just helps me prioritize the people who I can call, that would end up having a much better efficiency rate, right? But I feel that is I think that is slightly delayed in the sense that it's not a immediately value, it's not a value prop which is immediately visible,
Yeah.
right? So how do you kind of balance out building those features which actually
Yeah.
add value but is not easily sellable, versus something which, like adding a new dashboard or creating a new form, that is immediately sellable, adds value, and very tangible, right? Something I can immediately see. If
Yeah.
I'm able to take this extra data, that's immediately valuable to me. So how do you balance it? It's a little abstract question, but I'm curious to know how you balance it out and kind of like, where do you draw the line and stuff?
So I would rather kind of focus. Maybe I'll talk about the product roadmap, which kind of makes us do it.
Yeah.
Which kind of
Actually,
enables us to do
yeah.
this entire process. So I think there are metrics which we keep track of. One is the adaptability metric, like how frequently are you kind of using it, how efficient it is, and how is the kind of ROI is working for you. So these are the three metric which we kind of track while we kind of build our entire product roadmap as well. Currently, we have a visibility of what we are building in the next 4 quarters. I mean, that's the extent which we have visibility around. Though we want to kind of not spend 12 months, can we do it in 9 months is the goal, with maybe expansion of the team or maybe more leaders coming in, defining processes. Can that be done? That's the one of the goal after defining the product roadmap. Though it kind of, these metrics, adaptability enables you to kind of see whether they are going to use the product, if they're going to use it, to what extent of their entire collection space is kind of moving to the platform, digital platform, and then they are doing through that and moving away from the kind of the manual processes there. Efficiency is more on, can automations, so efficiencies in each of the module we keep track of. Today, if the time taken month on month, if the time taken to kind of recover an amount is about 20 days for a particular loan, can we reduce that to 15 days? That is one of a target for us, or a KRA which will be kind of defining, and can we kind of have each stakeholder to kind of be responsive, or be the product manager, they become responsible for that. Can we move this 20 to 15? And they'll kind of come up with the ideas corresponding to that. That's where the automation came in. That's how the automation intelligence product which we have on the top of communications module, where you can manually send bulk loads of these communication, but at the end you can automate as well. You don't need to send these manually. You can automate for the entire journey of such borrowers until recovery. So that is how it came with respect to kind of tracking these metrics. So every time we do a monthly metric tracker, we have this every, maybe be it the engineering team, be it the product team, be it the QA team, or maybe the hiring side. There are different teams which need to kind of prepare two slider, one with an Excel where how this cohort looks like with respect to certain metrics month on month, whether the improvement has happened on these metrics or not, or at least if not the improvement, the saturate, it's at the same line. There is no dip happening in it. And then the second is that what were the good which you kind of saw in the last month, what were the bad situations which you kind of had handled were there, and then you kind of handled it how. So there are these three different points which they will be answering on these. And then we kind of sit together, do a brainstorming session once a month. That's like once a month where we come together and think of where can we drive, what different ideas could be drive. So we have a Slack group of ideas where people keep putting these efficiency numbers, and then the product managers will keep driving these numbers while people give ideas, can we do this, and then people kind of comment and have a mutual discussion around it. That has been the journey in terms of bringing such products. Yes, it is a kind of a delayed thing. We don't prioritize as well in terms of maybe the entire product roadmap, given the resource we have, given the product user stories which we need to kind of complete. We plan it out accordingly for the sprints which we have, and then we kind of keep the breakup of the times accordingly. Can we pick it right now? Is it urgent to do that particular task? Based on that, it's mostly first priority would be business goals, the client goals, the features which are more important. That would be the priority at most, right? But then at the end, these are the value add which will bring to the system and needs to go along, and that we don't compromise in that part as well. So it's basically the balance which we keep creating.
Right. So from everything we've heard so far, it seems like a very iterative process, and also building along with the customer. Right now, I'm just curious about how your engineering team is structured today, and how do you plan to scale it over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years going forward?
So in the engineering, I think the team size is about 28 members, which is more on the engineers as well as product managers. And there are QAs and all. All combined, it would be about 34, 35 members in total. But then there are more freshers. So our average is of experience, or maybe the average age in the engineering team would be about, I guess, 25, 26, not more than that. That's the age average is they're kind of sitting at. Maybe some are like 4-year experience, some are 3-year experience, and many are interns, many are freshers. That combination is there, you would get, but all of them are so much enthusiastic because they get so much of challenging problems to solve every day, and the kind of enthu kind of always is there. In terms of scaling, yes, there is a requirement of scaling, and then we have been doing that for the last 4 months. We have scaled from almost a team size of about 23 to about 100 almost now. But the technology team would be about of those 35 member in the 100 space, where the other set of team is there. In the leadership, the importance is to kind of hire people with two types. One is on the leadership roles, where it could be engineering managers, where they come with experience to have that leap of steps, where they know the experience, they have gone through that experience of scalability around maybe in some other company, or maybe some of their own projects in the earlier stints which they might have done. So that is where we have hired like two different coming from two different companies. We have hired two EMs. They are yet to join, but they are kind of on track to join very soon with us. And the rest is in the product management, we kind of are wanting to scale and look for people who have come from different domains, because this is again something ideatic. Like, can they bring more ideas? Like, I look for people in the data related, like someone who might be automating the process. For example, companies like WebEngage, MoEngage, they work around with automations a lot. They work around with data driven approaches a lot to whatever set of strategies they define for customers. We want to kind of hire people around data, so that they kind of bring their mindset and the new fresh mindset towards problem which might be there in the collection space. And then on the leadership side, again, the people management skills is something which we keep looking up to. The culture is set, like we have culture values where you kind of want to appreciate everybody. There is no, even if they might have made a mistake, there is a way to kind of do the right thing, and kind of enable them to do the right thing. They might have be given the right motivations. They will do the right thing for you no matter what, given that right set of problems you have in front of them. That's empowering the entire team. Those sort of people, those sort of skills should be kind of more visible in the leaders, what we want to look at. And then we want to bring such leaders on board. And there is no like upper edge, I would say. We would want to hire on the senior side as many good people as we want, while we scale ourselves across different like modules, or maybe different clients or sectors there.
Right. So, in this conversation, one thing has become very apparent, the fact that you're not just a CTO, but a founder also, right? Because you talk about all of the non-functional aspects in a lot more detail that comes across, and the fact that you're talking about customers, use cases, and so on, not just the product and the technology side of things. So, that was my question in closing, which is, how does being a CTO and a founder affect the way you work and the way you think about things?
So, with more roles, I would say it's basically we started as a like team of three. We were three co-founders which started this company, and then thought of this entire problem. I think there are multiple hats I would have to wear at the same point of time. It's not just the team I need to manage, the technological team, the product which we have now started to build. But at the initial stage, being no product, I would have to sit and think through the solutions as well with the team ourselves. And then being like already an experience of building a product in the previous company, what knowledge can I drive and give that to our team, and then build the products accordingly. So I think multiple hats around, like investor relations would be there. They would be like team management. They would be like client management, because on the onboarding there are a lot of hiccups which would happen. It will not be plain simple that the onboarding is very plain simple with banks, and then it kind of in initial days you kind of tend to define those processes to be very simple, but then that is kind of iterative in its own nature. So that is multiple like roles which I have played. It comes with a lot of responsibilities there, and being a CTO kind of, it enables you to write the initial code in the start, because you know in and out where the system is. So it kind of enables me to talk to the team, and no one can fool around with you, because you know if a bug is created, how much time will it take, and how much of a product requirement or bandwidth would be required there. So maybe hands-on is still there with the bugs, not with the active development anymore. Maybe I still want to do it, but with the bugs, I'm still always present, that if there is anything coming up as a hot fix, we would be there at any point together to kind of solve it right then and there. So these responsibilities are always there. You're accountable for the entire product. Being even the founder, you're accountable for the entire team as well, if there are any mishappenings or any product. So yeah.
Right. All right, Anand, this has been a fascinating chat. Thank you so much for spending time with us. You've covered a bunch of insights that I think will be really useful for all of the audience who's listening to this. So thank you. Thanks so much again.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you, Augusto. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking. I mean, it was very, very good questioning. I think. Good.
Thanks, Anand.
Awesome. It reminded me of many like days, what things to step, because it has been a hustling thing. Not getting much time to remember what actually happened in the past. And recalling it on a piece, nice.
Nice. It's amazing you had a chance to pause and reflect on your journey, and we wish you all the best for what lies ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also, follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.